Welcome back to News Live. In one of the biggest battleground states in the country, Republicans are already claiming election fraud because of malfunctioning voting machines. In about 60 of Maricopa County, Arizona's 223 voting centers, there was a problem with voting machines not reading ballots properly. And this fueled further election fraud claims from former President Trump and his followers. Late last night, a judge blocked an emergency lawsuit by the RNC looking to extend the hours in Maricopa County. There are more than 100 lawsuits filed regarding midterm races before Election Day even began. Jon Sherman is the litigation director and senior counsel at the Fair Election Center and joins us now live. Jon, thank you so much for stopping by today.
Thank you for having me on.
So, Jon, hours into Election Day, Arizona had voting machine issues. What are we talking about here? Is this just going to lead to more lawsuits filed by the Republican Party?
So it's early days in the post-election period. It's only 12:42 p.m. on the East Coast on the day after the election. So we don't know yet what will be filed. But again, my organization, Fair Election Center, is strictly nonpartisan. But I know just from observing that what the parties will be looking at is the margin of victory. They'll be looking in very close elections as to whether or not there's an opportunity or a need for a recount when there's a very tight race. And there may be litigation that flows from that in extremely close races. Looking at the map right now of Senate races and gubernatorial races, many of these races were not decided by a very, very narrow margin of victory. Many of them were not particularly close in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and in Pennsylvania. But in Arizona and in Nevada, there are Senate and gubernatorial races that are still outstanding. They may ultimately come down to a very small margin of victory, and one of the candidates in those races may think there's some advantage in going to court, but they'll need to have a strong legal claim, and they'll need to marshal evidence. As we all saw back in 2020, the Republican and Trump teams, brought a variety of cases, over 60 of cases, but I believe only one of those cases. In most of those cases, there was simply not evidence to support the allegations that were being made, and that's what courts will be looking for.
Yeah, so the results were challenged in at least 63 different courts across the country. But historically speaking, how normal is this? Is this normal for an election cycle? Is this a new normal? I mean, is this what we should just expect moving forward?
Well, I think 2020 would definitely be considered abnormal. I think the level of litigation in the post-election period and the level of frivolous litigation that wasn't substantiated by evidence, where lawyers and candidates were making accusations based on conspiracy theories circulated on social media that they wouldn't substantiate and couldn't substantiate when they finally got into court. I think that was both unprecedented. It resulted in people like Rudy Giuliani being disbarred and others being sanctioned in court. That level of election denialism and baseless, frivolous litigation, I think you saw so far, clearly, I think there's been a rebuke of that from the voters in this election. That's with the outstanding elections in Nevada and Arizona not yet called, not yet decided. But there's been litigation over elections going back, it's as old as the country, but it's obviously increased in intensity since the 2000 election when Bush v. Gore, when the Supreme Court intervened and shut down the recount in Florida. Ever since then, there's been deeply contested fights over every voting rule, and that's only increased in recent cycles, where every rule of voter registration, in-person voting, the manner and means of casting an absentee ballot, all of that's been deeply contested and fought over in the courts, but usually in advance of the elections. The Supreme Court and other state courts have stated their strong preference for resolving election disputes well in advance of an election.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, more than 100 lawsuits were filed even before Election Day. And a large amount of these lawsuits, Jon, are circling around the issue of mail-in ballots. Let's talk about mail-in ballots for a second. Is there any evidence of fraud or issues that back up claims that mail-in voting or mail-in ballots can be fraudulent?
Mail-in voting is secure. There are instances of fraud, but they are extremely minimal given the vast universe of ballots that are cast by mail every single year. Those instances are detected, they're prosecuted, and those people have often served time. Those instances, I think, prove the rule. Those are exceptions that prove the rule, which is mail-in absentee voting is secure. And the fights that go on in court and in the legislatures are mostly over technicalities, such as whether a witness needs to be present when a voter casts a ballot, whether that witness needs to put down every element of their address on the absentee ballot certificate. There's still pending litigation right now in Pennsylvania over whether or not the voter needs to date the ballot, put down the date right next to their signature. There's been litigation in the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania over that, requiring that date to be present. And now there's still pending federal litigation brought by the ACLU. My organization, Fair Election Center, we've been involved in, along with Law Forward, in litigation over witness address requirements in Wisconsin. All of these fights will continue to go on even after this election. But the important point, zooming out, is this is a secure and time-tested method of voting that voters of all stripes and all parties use and have used for decades. And nothing about these disputes and squabbles over a small number, relatively small number of absentee ballots should shake voters' faith in this method of voting, which is extremely convenient and necessary, I should point out, too, for voters, elderly voters and voters with disabilities who simply don't have the same options when it comes to casting their ballot.
And quickly, in terms of all of this litigation, is there anything that can be done in the future to try and limit the amount of litigation and ensure the legitimacy of our elections? Is there anything that can be done?
Well, our elections are, I think, more legitimate because the courts are involved. They are, one of the most important branches. We have 3 branches of government in the federal system, and 3 branches of government in the state court system. And those checks and balances, I think, produce a more legitimate and ensure the integrity of the election. So I think it is far from being a negative or a disadvantage. The litigation that occurs, I think, is a way of settling disputes in advance of the election and ensuring the legitimacy and the integrity, because all parties can air their concerns and their claims that the law is otherwise, and then a court will weigh in and decide, and all of us have to live with those results, whether we like them or not. And that ensures that going into an election, we all know the rules are established and fair and have been decided by our institutions in some combination of the state legislature, the state executives, the governors, and the state courts. So, and the federal courts, of course, as well. So I think litigation can really serve a role in ensuring the legitimacy and integrity of our elections in advance of the election.
So essentially you're saying it's all part of the process. People just need to be patient. Jon Sherman from Fair Election Center. Jon, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.